Now, the funny part is we haven't come up with a new nickname for this, but I've got some good friends with me today. Mike O'Brien, we're here to talk about leadership in the fire department. All the way on the right, some guy you've seen before, Tom Jenkins, past president of the IFC, fire chief down in Rogers. Tom, how are we doing today?
Very good. It's very cold in Arkansas, Mike, and we have snow on the ground, but I don't want to talk about it with a guy from Michigan.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk about it with a guy from Wisconsin because he's the other side of the lake. Steve Davis is with us, who is the current fire chief in this little town called Madison. And I knew nothing about Madison. And Steve, we probably shouldn't talk CrossFit this early, but Madison is the current home of CrossFit. And your town has some of the best looking people ever show up in it. I'm sure your engine crews and crews have nothing to do with, but when 10,000, 20,000 CrossFit fans show up, what happens in Madison?
Well, Madison's a unique community, if nothing else. It's a population of about 255,000 to 260,000. Balloons up probably over 300,000 during the weekday because it's kind of the hub of the southern part of the state. Capital city, county seat to Dane County, Wisconsin. Overall population of Dane County is about 550,000 people. And Madison has some uniqueness about it. It's kind of a liberal town, college town. Go Badgers! Big Wisconsin Badger fans here. If you don't love the Badgers, you're always welcome, but you get a little bit of a hairy eyeball at you once in a while. And so CrossFit started with us a couple of years ago now, and it's a good event for our community. Brings in a lot of revenue, a lot of economic drive from it. Probably not as much as a Badger football game when we put 80,000 fans in the stands for those games. But it's a lot of fun. Madison offers a lot, great opportunity. We've got a couple of really world-class fishing lakes here that the city surrounds, Lake Mendota and Lake Monona. So it's an exciting place to be.
How many engine companies and stuff like that, Chief?
Sure. We've got 14 firehouses, total strength of 404 as of Monday. I had some success this year in the budget, and our council and mayor gave us an additional 20 positions.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And so we've got 14 firehouses, 12 engine companies, 2 standalone ladder companies, to round out a total of 5 ladder companies. 3 of them are in double companies, 2 standalone with an ambulance, and then 9 ambulances. And we run about 35,000 calls a year. The majority, about 70 to 75%, depending on the time of year, are EMS related. And see our fair share of structure fires. Now, we're not, the smoke you see from where you're at isn't coming from Madison, Wisconsin, but we do about 1 structure fire a day, working structure fire on average. And so we're set up pretty well. We've got, our target goal, always following NFPA 1710. We want that first vehicle on the scene in 5 minutes or less. And we meet that goal about 80% of the time.
That's good. That's good. That's, I actually think that number of structure fires for a city that size that's pretty steady.
Yeah. And, it of course goes down to how you define a structure fire, but
sure.
that quick response, Madison's a community that really, should be a prototype of how you staff vehicles. We have 4 on every engine and ladder company. And we're putting 24 people on the scene in less than 10 minutes, typically. And so
well exceeding the 1710 standard.
Yeah. And so when you look at that staffing model, though, we hold our structure fires to the area of origin about 90% of the time. It's still a structure fire, but we're getting there with 4 highly trained people that communicate well with each other and within the system, and we all understand it very well. And so we have success. And I also have to throw a shout out to our prevention team. We've got about 25 civilians in our prevention department, and 12 to 13 of those are inspectors. We've got a plan reviewer, we've got a fire marshal, and that team really works day in and day out to make sure our buildings stay safe. And if it wasn't for that component, investing in that prevention side and the inspection side, our fire volume would be quite a bit higher.
That's a good plug. You've complimented 1710, so I like you, and now you complimented your fire prevention staff. Mike likes you. This is going to be a big win for you.
I try to suck up to as many people as I can every day.
Hey, and you've already announced your retirement, so you legitimately will gain nothing from our friendship. What about you said 9 ambulances, though? That strikes me as so what happens when you must run out of ambulances from time to time? Can you talk about that? I'm just curious while I've got you.
Sure. We do run out of ambulances frequently. We added the 9th in January. That's part of the 20 positions that'll start Monday. And our call volume, has gone up like everybody else between 6 to 10% annually on EMS transports. We do all of our own transporting. So those ambulances are hopping. Most of them are, over double-digit calls in that 24-hour period. And so, we could justify an ambulance at every station without a doubt. The issue comes in is, what do you give up for it if you need to? And we as a staff have made real conscious decisions to not give up fire protection in lieu of ambulances, because we do have surrounding communities that we're part of a consortium in the county. So we've got ALS partners, and we do a borderless system in the county for ALS style calls. So if one of our surrounding communities, Sun Prairie, Middleton, Fitch-Rona, has a closer, quickest ALS response, we drop the border and that vehicle goes that surrounding community. And likewise, we have that shared service agreement, both sides. So I say there's 9 ambulances. We're really more like 15 kind of countywide and in and around the municipality, the way we share that service. And it's also unique because we're only one of 2 career fire departments in the county that's fully career, and it's us and the state has 6 to 8 firefighters on duty at our airport. But so our surrounding partners are made up primarily of paid on call or volunteer. Some of them have paid on premise during daytime hours when they run short on staffing. So it's unique to blend the 1710 and the 1720 NFPA standards together. As you know, Chief Jenkins and O'Brien, they don't always jive, right?
Oh, yeah.
They're trying to accomplish 2 different things. And so it creates rubs once in a while, those political rubs and those, well, I'll just say maybe some ego rubs once in a while. And so at the end of the day, it all works out really well. I think in our community, our city, and our county as well.
So Chief, Tom talked about your retirement's coming up, so congratulations there. But let's go back in time, because I can talk fire trucks, staffing all day long. Where did it start for you? What was high school like? What was your family like? Did you grow up in the area?
Yep, grew up in the fire service. My dad was a volunteer in my town that I grew up in. It's a town called Rio, R-I-O, and it's about 30 miles north of Madison, and it's right in the middle of Columbia County, which is a county north of Dane. And followed him to the fire station. I've got that classic story of followed Dad to the firehouse. In 1979, they built the fire station right next door to our house. So it got even easier for me because I could just walk over when the siren blew. But, just it's all I can remember wanting to do is be a firefighter. And so high school was good, played sports. I'm kind of unique the way I got on Madison Fire at the time in 1989. The state had opened up a incentive window with the ETF, our pension system, to try and generate some activity in that group. So they offered some incentives for people to retire early. Well, at the time, the economics in Madison weren't real great, so they actually stopped running their own hiring process for about 2 years. And the first year they stopped was 1989, and they contracted with our local tech school. And luckily, I had just been finishing up my associate's degree in fire and went through a fire certification academy. And the city decided at the time to just hire certified firefighters out of that academy. So I competed for 30 spots in 1989 against about 65 people. And I tell our newbies that come on today and say, well, you competed against 1,800 people for those same 30 spots, because we hire, about 15 to 30 a year. And so I'm, truly blessed that timing lined up for me, and I'm not even sure why sometimes it was so that I'm so blessed to be where I'm at. But started in 1989, and then just worked my way up through the ranks in the organization. I was a firefighter for about 5 years, and then went to paramedic school and rode the ambulance for about 5 years, and then got promoted to lieutenant in 2000. Worked primarily my whole career downtown at Station 1, which historically has been our busiest station, because it covers the campus and student housing and our entertainment districts and things. So it was always a lot of fun. And decided in training has always been my thing. As a lieutenant, I did a lot of training, spent a stint in our training division early on in my career. Because I think if you love training, you understand the importance of this job, and how important it is to be prepared. And then you also want to share those experiences and your knowledge so that others can be prepared like you. And so in 2000, and after 10 years as a lieutenant at Station 1, being involved in lake rescue and working primarily on a ladder company and swinging over the engine when I had to, I decided to write for division chief and got promoted to division chief in 2011. And then when my predecessor announced her retirement in 2012, I thought, well, why not? I'll try it. Really did not probably expect to get it. And I still say to this day, I'm not sure I was the best candidate, but managed to serve as fire chief for the last 10 years. So pretty proud of it. Done a lot of good work.
As you should be. Okay, I have a question though. You said that you were in a group of about 65 competing for 30 positions, right?
Yep.
And then you said, these days there's 1,000 plus competing for the same, 15 to 30 positions. Now, if that's true, you may be the anomaly across the United States. So I'm curious, are you seeing some recruitment and retention challenge in the career staffing model that you have there?
What do you mean by challenge?
Do you lack qualified applicants?
No, not at all. Our hiring process we do every 2 years, and we typically get between 12 and 800 applicants when we put an application pool out. Madison, our local 311's got probably the best contract in the state. A lot of great benefits, and that in itself, the city takes really good care of its employees as a whole. But the contract is special, and there's a lot of unique benefits with it. And so we've never struggled with applicants.
That's huge. I've talked to departments big and small, and even, here in Rogers, we're about 100, a little over 150 career. And we get the same quality. We don't get the quantity of it. It used to be that it was a race. And now I just don't feel like you have to run as fast to get on the job. And so I love hearing that there's still communities that have a vibrant applicant pool where people, I mean, in a model like that, and tell me if I'm wrong, Chief, there's a lot of really, really good girls and guys out there that want to be firefighters that are testing multiple cycles to get on because there's just not the quantity of jobs, right?
Yeah, that's right. And so it's not uncommon for us to see applicants that have tried 4, 5, 6 different times. And, they'll start when they get out of high school or get out of college, and we maybe won't hire them until they're 35, 36, 37 years old. And they've tried, several times to get on. It's that competitive right now. Now, with that said, it's important to have a process that really gets you the best candidates out of that hiring pool, and we continually refine and revisit our process to ensure that that we're getting and finding through the process the best candidates to look at. And that is no small feat. I mean, that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. This class that I'll start on Monday, when it's all said and done throughout the whole process, we figure we've invested about $35,000 in each one of those individuals. And, it's a lot of money, a lot of my time. I do a lot of my own work around hiring because, it is my job. And if I want to put my name on as fire chief of this department, I think it's important I know that candidate.
So what do you tell? All right, so you got a candidate, they made it through. I'm sure you interact with them. What's your advice to these newest firefighters? Like, we all have our speeches.
Sure. Well, and so in our case, I talk a lot at the tech school with our associate degree class and our academy classes and things. And the biggest thing is bring your whole self to the organization. And if you sit in a classroom in front of 50 kids and you say, hey, look to the left and look to your right, you're all saying the same thing. If you're going to come in and interview with me as fire chief and want a job on the Madison Fire Department, you better tell me who you are, because all of you answer the questions the same way. You're all certified the same way. You're all have the same exact experiences for the most part. Tell me who you are and what you're all about as a person. I want to hear what you've done in your community that you live in. I don't care if you've lived in Madison, Wisconsin, or somewhere in Illinois or Michigan. Tell me what you've done. Have you helped people out? And I think one of the simplest questions you can ask somebody is, tell me what you've ever done to help somebody when it wasn't related to a 911 call, when your pager didn't go off. I don't care if you saved 15 people out of a burning building. Do you help the little old lady across the street in a rainstorm with hands full of groceries? That's what we need in Madison, is that person that's willing to pull the rig over and help somebody across the street, because that makes the impression, right? That makes the whole thing come together for us.
So 33 years on the job. What's changed with your firefighters? I mean, what do you notice now? I mean, that's a cool lens to be 33 years on the job, and you were on the line for a lot of that, right? You were a lieutenant up until 2011. Is that what you said?
Yep, that's right. And I got hired to cut holes in roofs and pull hose lines. I didn't get hired to be a fire chief. And so, that's probably a whole nother topic of discussion, the challenges that come with throwing a roof wrecker in the chief's seat. And so, but, I think some of the big changes are, in our academy, we noticed a few years ago, and we run an academy that's 16 weeks long. We go through in the initial part, the first 4 to 6 weeks is all the state certification training that's required. And then we get right into our stuff, the Madison stuff. This is what you need to know the first day. And as I tell them on the first day, you need to define what your worst case scenario is at 0701 on day one. And you better come out of this academy prepared to deal with that. you know, what's your worst case scenario? We can't define that for you, so you need to buckle down in the academy and figure out, you know, oh boy, if I pull up and I'm on a 4-person engine company and the lieutenant tells me to get a ladder around the back and pick somebody out of a building, I better be able to do that, right?
Mm.
And so I think one of the biggest changes, though, is the intellectual side has gotten so much better. We're so much smarter, but the blue collar side of the job has tailed. And I think that, you know, when you hear chiefs talk, that's one of their biggest challenges. And so we started that flip classroom concept back in about 2014 and said, hey, you know, the people that we're bringing on now are electronically savvy. They can run an iPad just as well as anybody. Let's get them the stuff they need to do electronically. Get them a tablet. They can learn that stuff on their own time. And let's reduce some of our lecture time and let's put them in gear and get them sets and reps. So about 75% of the academy that we run now is all sets and reps. It's ladders, it's hose work, it's wrecking roofs, it's all that stuff that we need to know, that stuff that tails off. I mean, you get smarter as time goes on from your experience. You learn better ways to do things, but a lot of firefighters, I think, quit studying or quit learning the craft in a way. Because they rely on that experience. So let's speed up the sets and reps and let them learn the coursework kind of as a self-study concept almost. And that's had great impact. The other thing that we had to do a couple years ago is tell our young people, you know, when you go to a fire, you're going to be sore, right? Because you're using muscles you didn't know you had, and you don't know when you're using them. It's 3 a.m. And so probably back in 2013, we had a pretty good structure fire, and we got like 4 or 5 injury reports from a couple of our rookies that have been on less than a year with sore back, sore shoulders. And I said, you know, to the team, we've got to address this, because the people that we're hiring today are super smart, but a lot of them didn't bale hay. They didn't work on the farm. You know, a lot of those blue collar jobs that in construction, whatever it is, we're not seeing a ton of that application pool. They're trying to be professional firefighters. So, you know, so that's a point of emphasis. Hey, when you go into a fire, you're going to come out the next day or two, you're going to be sore. So
I like how you've adjusted your training over the time that you've been chief. If you did that in 2014 because you noticed something different with the people that work for you.
And a lot of that just came from feedback from our lieutenants saying, hey, the product you're putting out,
where else did it come from? I mean, that's perfect.
Yeah.
You listen, that means your department's automatically progressive because you're listening to the people on the line doing the work. I think that's great, Chief.
Yep.
Did you find the same? Okay, so that was firefighters. What about these company officers? Because you know, I think our company officers are in a really rough spot at times, right? They got the top, they get it from the bottom. What are you seeing with your company officers? Because a lot of those firefighters, I got to think, 14, you might start to be seeing some of those getting promoted. How are they making the transition? Or what are your company officers bringing now?
Yeah, so we're in a unique situation that we've got a really strong young core group of really super smart officers. Mm-hmm. They're a lot better than I ever was as a lieutenant on the fire ground for job knowledge, for training, for communication. But I think with that comes kind of a breakdown in leadership from time to time. And so it was back a few years ago now that we started a leadership at all levels concept of officer training. And I myself go in and meet with our officers. There's 58 of them across the 3 shifts, and talk about leadership expectations. And my thing has always been, it starts at the kitchen table. If you don't engage your group at the kitchen table, you're going to have massive failure on the fire ground. And so, I had an old lieutenant that was a mentor of mine that when I got promoted said, if the crew's got time to sit around and complain, they got time to clean. So don't, when you come in as a lieutenant, set the tone right away and the expectations. And because that directly transfers onto that fire rig and that fire ground. If you've got a lieutenant that allows certain things to happen in the station or allows certain things to happen around that kitchen table, it's going to impact performance of that crew for the day. So we spend a lot of time talking about kitchen table leadership, right? Most of them know because they've all studied, they've all been trained, they know their job on the fire ground on the EMS call. It's just when it's such a younger group, they really need a guidance out of more senior leaders, senior officers around how to make those decisions day in and day out around that kitchen table.
You think they're catching? You have a background in peer support, I believe, in the city. So you see, I get a mix here of sometimes some of our bosses with the emotional intelligence, right? Like, how are their people really doing? They're not observing it. And I think we have some staff, I used to say there's no new way to die, but boy, are people finding some unique ways to die that are putting horrible pressures, I think, on our staff just in what they're dealing with. So how are your company officers? What is Madison doing for peer support, emotional wellness?
Sure. And about 5 or 6 years ago now, we started a peer support team. And I think the key to the success of our peer support team is the chiefs stay out of the way of it. Mm-hmm. And so the officers, the members themselves, whether it's a bad call or somebody's going through a divorce or anything like that, can reach out directly to the team, and we don't have to get involved in that. Now, we get involved as an administrative team when we need to schedule debriefs or certain things for crews, but for the most part, the peer support team runs itself. And we've stayed out of the way of it all along. So as an example, when it came time to pick the team, we said to the membership, give us nominations and we will set up interviews and we will have a third party group pick who they think are best for the peer support team. And so we did that. We facilitated the selection process, but stayed out of the way of it. And so, we brought in people from our EAP, people from our police department that already had a team up and running. And because we didn't want any conspiracy or any confidentiality breaches tied to this team, because confidentiality is important for peer support, probably the most important thing. And the other thing that we did, I think that's somewhat unique, is we incorporated some of our retirees in the team. And the advantage with a retiree is they can go in and if a crew goes on a bad call, and a lot of times, they just need a cup of coffee and to sit and talk to somebody. And what we found is with well-respected retirees that still want to be involved, we can send them into a station. They can go through a modified defusing, debriefing. They've all had training through the IAFF's peer support network and program. But the best part about that retiree is they come in, they do their work, and then they leave. And that crew doesn't have to worry about that person coming back to work the next day and going to a different station on a ship out and saying, hey, those guys at 8 were really messed up yesterday from that call. And so, I don't know that that's our original idea. I'm assuming a lot of peer support teams are set up that way to utilize those retirees when they can. But it works out really well for us.
I think that's actually kind of interesting. I've done a lot of conversation with Sarah Jenke and her team about this topic. And at least for me, that's the first time I've encountered somebody using retirees in that format. And I can think of, especially when you use the right ones, I can think of a lot of reasons that's good. On the topic of mental health, firefighter mental health and recruit firefighters, I'm curious your thoughts as you look back on your career. that, if we have a candidate that wants to get on the job, we have a test to make sure they have the physical strength and dexterity to pull hose and throw ladders and search for victims. We do some basic aptitude test to make sure that they're intelligent enough to retain information and learn and do the job of a firefighter. We interview them to gain some insight to interpersonal skills. We might do background checks, reference checks, but I struggle the more and more these mental health conversations take place. I often kind of wonder, what tests do we need to be giving people, because we're all not the same, right? Like, what a bad call to Mike O'Brien is different to Steve Davis. It's different than Tom Jenkins, and what you all might be able to tolerate, it might send my world upside down. And I wonder if we have some obligation in the future as we get smarter to maybe better screen applicants who just don't have the mental strength, if you follow me, for that. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that, with your kind of background and experience?
Well, I tell you, so I have gone back and forth a lot on that, right? There's some departments that give that mental health battery test pre-employment. I'd like to think that that side of it's less important than what we do with the people that come in. And if Steve Davis was to create a fire department today, it would start on the mental health, the physical health side, to say we're going to have this fitness program, we're going to have a good mental health program. And I think it's important to have relationships with EAP and the psychiatry side of this. And so, if Steve Davis was going to recreate the Madison Fire Department, the defusing, debriefing, a check-in on mental health every 6 months as mandatory, I think would be a better way to go personally. I came on in the generation of suck it up, kid, can't you take it kind of thing, right? We don't talk about it anymore once we get back at the station. And I think we've certainly learned that's not the way to go. But I also think it's important that we check in outside of that emergency more frequently. So right now, we peer support's available to everybody. We have those mandatory defusings, if you will, where we get everybody together and talk about the event. But prior to those emergency events, or throughout, kind of prophylactically throughout the year, I think we should be doing a better job at checking in on our people and saying, hey, you got to talk to a professional. It might be 5 minutes, it might be 15 minutes, it might be an hour. But just like we do medical evaluations every year for our people, they do a psychological evaluation as well, just to check the brain, because it's important. And one of the goals internally for me is I think it's important, and we don't talk about this a lot in the fire service, but we work really hard to maintain a physical, safe place to work. Good air quality, good vehicles, good equipment, all that stuff. But what are we doing for our people to make it emotionally safe for them to be here, right? How are we handling situations in the station, in the house, conflicts between firefighters, the calls that they go on? And that emotional safety is probably, one would argue, more important than the physical safety, right? Because the emotional safety can drag down that physical safety. So I haven't heard a lot of people talking about that concept of emotional safety. Dr. Yankee and I have had those conversations before when I've run into her when she's been in Wisconsin. But that's in the future, I think, really where the fire chiefs, the firefighters, need to buckle down and get to work on.
Have you guys watched Ted Lasso yet, Tom?
No, I've been encouraged to watch it.
They hire a psychologist for the soccer team, and they put her in what would be the equivalent of the chief's office, and don't let the chief in. And there's a parade of staff. Like, I could just see it happening. I think, Steve, you hit a great point, because In fact, I was just talking to my HR director about this. How could we even do it? You imagine if once a quarter we just got them in here so they covered our 3 shifts. It's here. It's an asset, for a check-in. That's not a badge. It's not HR. It's not. I think you're hitting something on the head that we have some potential in taking care of that space. So, all right, transitioning. Madison's kind of getting on the map here for this partnership with Pierce. And something about a battery fire truck. Now, Tom, I don't know about you, but I've been in 3 discussions now where Pierce is in the room and they dropped this discussion. And it is the most in tune I've ever seen fire chiefs. I think not ever, but we're all getting pressure to be prepared for electrifying our fleet. And I think you guys are on the crux. You've got this demo, and there's a whole bunch of things I never thought of. I'm super excited. I won't ever have to buy those orange hoses or yellow hoses to hook to my fire trucks anymore if this comes to fruition. But tell us about what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so thanks for asking about this. This is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. And I think it was 2017 we approached Pierce because Madison, like a lot of communities, are under pretty aggressive orders by their government officials, by their elected officials, to become sustainable, less dependent on oil and things like that, the renewable energy type things. And so I think it was in 2010, 2011, the city passed a pretty tight resolution to get the city fleet on renewable energy in all of our buildings by 2030. And so, I wasn't really paying attention to it. It came up a couple of times over the years. And then it was around 2015, it like dawned on me that we're only 15 years out and I haven't heard peep about any of these concepts ever about what we're going to do for our fleets. And so we approached Pierce in 2017, I think it was, and asked them what they're doing. And at that time, they said, the market doesn't show that we need to change anything. I think looking back on it now, they probably had this product under development, but you know how tight-lipped all these manufacturers are. So in 2018, we were approached by them to say, hey, we're thinking about this concept. Would you be interested in partnering to try it out? And so we, of course, said absolutely. And that started this relationship. And probably the hardest part of the whole thing was trying to keep it secret until we introduced it in 2020. But they allowed us to come in on the design. And our big requirement for them, our big ask was this thing still has to be a fire engine. So whatever you do, it needs, when it goes out the door, it needs to be able to operate 24 or 48 hours. And of course, that's challenging on the electrical side of things. So they designed the Volterra line, which has got it's primarily driven by battery. They designed the battery configuration for our engine 8 on the east side. They liked our territory there. It covers residential, commercial. It's got a long section of interstate travel. It's got a real diverse territory, and it's busy. So engine 8 averages close to 15 runs a day. And so they designed the vehicle to be primarily at Station 8. It's got a real small diesel engine. It's got a battery pack on it. I really can't get into some of the technicalities of it because of those non-disclosure agreements. But the secret sauce really for the vehicle is in the transmission that allows it to run the pump, allows it to run the diesel engine, allows it to run the batteries. And so when the crew goes out and gets in the vehicle, it's battery operated. You don't hear it turn on. I mean, you can hear some of the compressors running and things like that. It's super quiet in the cab, and it operates. It's got as good a torque as any diesel engine. I mean, it gets out and moves. When the crew gets a fire call, they get in it, they drive to the fire in electric mode, and if they need to use the pump, they put the pump in gear, and that's when the diesel engine kicks in.
Okay, so let me ask, can I ask a couple of questions about that, Chief? You have my mind.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay, because you guys are on the forefront. I think you're the only one that Pierce has a demo. I know LA County's got one they're building, or LA City, I'm sorry, and
Yep.
Miami-Dade, and so a lot of folks talking about it. This is a rig that making a lot of runs. Can you tell me just a couple of things you like about it, and maybe a couple of things that for manufacturers who might listen to this or other departments who might consider it that maybe you'd like to see improved upon? Not necessarily that you're unhappy with them. I heard some conversation early on about as these fire apparatus manufacturers move to electric, we'll have to look at the power supplies at the stations and some retrofitting of those facilities. So just anything good and some bad, because you only see the glossy brochures so far.
Sure. And one of the challenges for all of us is going to be the infrastructure, the electric coming into the station, the charger, putting all that in place. The charging station itself was about $75,000. And so, that's going to be a challenge if you start to look at electrifying a 30 station fleet. Yeah. And so I can't honestly say anything I don't like about it, because it's still a fire engine. And so the as far as the battery, the transmission, the drivetrain, all that stuff, it operates exactly like every fire engine we have in the fleet. And so that was one of our requirements on Pierce's. When we stick a driver at Station 8, we don't want them to have to go through a bunch of hoopla to try and figure out how to operate this thing. We want them to come in, put their gear on, check the rig out, and it's going to operate just like engine 14 or engine 1. And so they created that. And so the driver doesn't even necessarily know if it's in electric mode or diesel mode.
Have they run the batteries down to near zero?
Yep. Yep. And so it takes about 90 minutes to go from zero charge, which is about 20% battery life, back to full strength. When they go on an EMS call, your typical EMS run, a couple miles out, couple miles back, it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to recharge it back to 100%. The vehicle itself will do about 37 miles on a charge, which, you say, well, that's not very far, but for our use and our application, it's they could run probably a 24-hour work cycle without having to charge it, right? Because and a lot of the batteries can be designed on usage and distances and things like that. Pierce built this one for Station 8's territory. So we looked at a ton of data on their call types, their run volume, their distances, and designed the battery to operate on a 24-hour cycle. But, since the vehicle's gone in service, the batteries are on another generation. So they're going to get more distance out of them, more power out of them, on less of them. And I think right now Pierce is looking at putting these into production. I can't speak officially for them, but sometime in 2023 to 2024, you'll see the first vehicles run off the line up there. And then the other neat thing about it is they can take the technology and put it on anything really in their lineup. So if it doesn't have to be on the Enforcer chassis, which it's on now currently, but by the time it comes into production, there'll be other chassis options with it as well, I'm pretty sure. And I'm not selling for Pierce by any means, and I don't really know what their competitors are doing out there. All I know is that Madison's got the only one in service going on calls today, and it's working out really, really well.
That's a huge testament. If I was Jim Johnson, I'd tape this video and show it to people. That's a heck of a testament. No doubt.
And let me come back to that just a second. We were intentional with Station 8. It's our busier company. It's our heavy rescue team. So there's a lot of firefighters at this station, right? Firefighters, they're critical. And, one of the reasons we selected that is because we wanted honest feedback on how they thought the thing performed. And we wanted them to go out there and try and wreck it. And so that's what they've been doing, giving us really good feedback on how it goes. And so far, I think we've got one diehard diesel guy out there that, you know, you'll have to pry a diesel engine out of my cold dead hand. But we've got some really strong firefighters that are loving this thing. So it's a testament to the product, I think.
That is really cool. You know, these are always more expensive, especially when it's emerging technology. Are you seeing an impact in fuel usage that as a, you know, when we send this to bean counters, that they would go, yeah, this actually makes financial sense, not just environmental sense over the lifetime of the apparatus? Or is there enough data to even comment yet?
So realistically, it'll never pay for itself. And I think that's going to be a struggle for fire chiefs as they have these conversations with their city managers, is where are the savings going to come in? These are really about the environment at this point. Now, maybe as the generations of batteries improve and designs improve and things like that, they will. But right now, we're saving about 500 to 750 gallons a month in fuel, which is pretty good. And then the environmentalists look at it from a carbon dioxide savings. And in the first 3 months, I think we saved about 30,000 pounds of carbon dioxide from getting discharged into the environment. And so, you know, when you look at it from an environmental standpoint, I think the improvements are already there, right?
Yeah, a lot of that stuff's all relative, and I'm not an expert in it, but that sounds impressive. Even just on the fuel savings, that sounds impressive. If you don't break even, that's a cool piece of apparatus, and that's neat to have that in your you know, your final months.
Yeah.
You know, Chief, I don't know. Let's see. We talked about peer support, hiring, transitioning your training, now battery. You have a very, it seems to me that your leadership style, you're very inclusive. You are getting feedback. You're pushing it down. What do you, like, when you think about what legacy you're leaving, specifically maybe in leadership, do you feel that your leadership is going to be carried on by the staff that you're working with?
Well, you know, that's a good question. And, you know, I'm still a young person, and I don't know that I'm 100% done with the fire service yet, or being a fire chief somewhere. But I came in, I was 42 years old when I came in as chief in 2012, and I said I'd stay 10 years. And I've got this, I don't know if it's weird feeling on leadership, but I think jobs like ours need to turn over more frequently than they do. And I think 10 years is about max for a fire chief personally. And I've thought that for quite a while. And if you're really in tune with the organization, and how do you stay in tune? You do culture surveys, you do station visits and station talks, and you know, you try and get good, honest feedback from the crews. I would say at about the 7.5 to 8 year mark, I started to notice that ideas weren't responded to as well as they were in the first 5 years. And so it kind of really brought it together for me to say, yep, I feel like it's time for new direction or new voice or new thought. And so I think, you know, I've got some friends that have been CEOs for a while, and they and around in the financial world and different business worlds, and you know, you have a few beers with them, and I think they fall in that same realm, that you get that 7 to 8 year mark, you either better be reinventing yourself or coming up with a new shtick, or they're going to stop responding. And so, you know, I think it's important that you do kind of a career check on yourself if you're a chief at that 10 year mark, and figure out, you know, use tools that are out there and we all know about, these culture surveys, and figure out if you're effective or not. And if you're not effective, get the hell out of the way and let somebody come in that wants to improve the organization or think they can. And that's not everybody, right? Some chiefs can go 20, 25 years. And that's why I say, I think I've got some skills that I would like to continue to use. And you might see me pop up in another chief's role somewhere someday. but for now, I'm going to get off the hamster wheel and let somebody else come in here. As far as my legacy, I don't know what the hell that would be. A couple of my friends will tell you Pizza Saturday, because even though I didn't invent it, I think every firehouse in Madison, Wisconsin has pizza on Saturday night. And we started that at Station 1B back in 2000. So, and that's where I was assigned, and it grew from there. And you know, I'm happy with the body of work that we've done. I'm sad about some things and celebrate other things. And you know, the celebrations, I think as chiefs, we forget to do that. And you have to remind your team and your staff to, hey, let's celebrate some of this stuff. You know, adding the resources that we've added in the last 10 years. You mentioned the 2 stations that we've added. We also added a fire administration building. We took a building from 1966, tore it down, partnered with a developer in town and put it in a 12-story high-rise next to Station 1. And, you know, we talk about sustainability. Well, the taxes off of that private high-rise that we're in pays for the crews in the station. It cost about $3 million for that crew to run for a year. And the building that we're in now, that's about the tax base that's produced out of that building. So, you know, when we talk sustainability and all this kind of stuff, I think that needs to be part of it as well, not just environmental sustainability. But I'm off on a tyrant now, so you guys pull me back.
No, I think it's good. I did a presentation with a buddy of mine, Jake Rhodes, at FRI in 2011, 2012, after I'd been chief for a few years. And one of my slides was like, it was the 10 things I wish I would have known before I became chief. And one of my slides was, we got to do better at celebrating stuff. Like, we're hypercritical. We take home all the failures, but you know, if you give a crap about the job, which I think is the most crucial ingredient, it doesn't matter where you're at. If you care about the job and you love the fire department, you'll accumulate way more success than you do anything else, because you care and you have tenacity. And I love that you said that you whether it's on social media, it's easier to celebrate now. You know, the community rallies behind it. And Chief, as far as I'm concerned, you're 100% right about that. We have to celebrate. But I also like knowing that if I'm in Madison on a Saturday, sometime in the next few years, I can get pizza at any of the firehouses too. That's
absolutely. I can't guarantee it's going to be good, but
that's all right.
Tom, have you ever been to Madison?
I have. I've been to a few places. Yeah.
It's a gorgeous town. Like, I can't believe more people don't talk about it, especially here in the Midwest. You know, I think, you know, Chief, you've been a fantastic steward of the city, and I hope that fire department's proud of what you guys have collectively done, because I think that's what leadership's about, is how do you move this needle? You're talking things that I think some chiefs dream of, getting one of those things in a 10-year period. And I'm starting to lose track on both hands what you got done collectively. And sounds like you have an amazing team of great people over there. You've got creative thinkers. So the platform's yours. Any last kind words? You want to pick on Tom for any reason, we can do that. But any kind words or last parting thoughts?
Well, I actually talk about Tom all the time, because we got into N4s a couple of years ago, and I watched a YouTube video of him explaining N4s, and we've gotten a lot of traction out of it, and as far as planning the future. And one of the best things I like, he talked about high acuity call volume in paramedics, and having the ability to look at that dashboard throughout a day, and when that paramedic hits a threshold, you pull them off the rig so your quality stays up. And I tell you, I learned a ton from that, and have learned so much since we got into the N4s family. It's just a great tool. But no, I'm excited for the fire service in the future. I mean, we're doing things that today, I think, across this country that we only dreamed about even 10 years ago. So I think the future of the fire service is bright, as long as we don't screw it up somehow.
100%. And Mike, when you post this, you'll have to tag Lori. I know she's not officially involved anymore, but she'll be flattered to know that
Yeah.
we're talking about N4s. That's good for us.
Well,
Yeah, and I tell you what, if there's a fire chief that's going to listen to this, I don't know what your viewership is, if it's 6 or 6,000. If you're not part of that N-Force family right now, you better be, because it's exactly what City Hall's asking you for.
I agree. Those things like N4s, Pulse Point, there's a lot of just some of that technology stuff that you get into thinking it'll be an extra, a little icing on the cake, and then it becomes mission critical. Like, how do we live without some of this stuff? I agree with you.
Yep.
well, right. In for people who don't know, right, Tom, give a 10-second on what N-Force is.
We've met before, Mike. I don't do 10 seconds to anything almost. Yeah, N4s is a National Fire Operations Reporting System. It's the ability to collect data that is not currently part of the National Fire Incident Reporting System 5.0 data set. Very plainly, it's looking at stuff that we need to be looking at, and unfortunately, changing N4s takes a long time. That's turning an aircraft carrier. N4s for us is how we're looking at analytics for accreditation. It's how we're looking at daily performance for our ambulance crews to make sure we're not running into sleep deprivation problems. It's how we're looking at resource exhaustion, and it's a critical part of our DNA now in the organization. And it actually interface for us. We were able to use the same interface we had with our Pulse Point app here in the community. We're a Pulse Point community, and so we kind of even got a 2-for-1 deal on the data stream, which almost never happens.
Yeah, and I think what the chief was even saying is, right, it's affecting our operations through data. Like, who would have ever thought our command staff are having real-time data to make decisions, right, predictables, preventable, and here's a software using AI telling you, look, you need to move these paramedics around because they're not going to render the care that the community expects. And what a way to mix technology. Chief, just it's been an absolute pleasure spending the last hour with you. I know we're going to see you somewhere in the future. And just a big congratulations from Tom and I. Thank you for spending time with us. And we hope everybody has a great day.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
guys. Appreciate it.
Chief.